Hey, welcome to Audiomover A.M. It is September 29th, 2025. And in the news today, legendary member of KISS hospitalized and cancels show. But before we read that news, let's take a look at some birthdays that happened today. So over the weekend, on September 27th, Randy Bachman, and yes, it is pronounced Bachman, not Bachman. Randy Bachman, who was with the Guess Who and, of course, Bachman Turner Overdrive, was born in 1943, so he just turned 82 over the weekend. Meatloaf, who, of course, passed away in 2022, had his birthday on the same day, September 27th. He was born in 47. Yesterday, George Lynch, from Dokken and Lynch Mob, obviously, turned 71. Happy birthday to George Lynch. And then today, Jerry Lee Lewis. Today's Jerry Lee Lewis's birthday. He was born in 1935. Other things that happened on this day. In 1973, Grand Funk Railroads were an American band, hits #1. Can you believe that? That was a Todd Rundgren production. That was such a huge song. It was amazing because they had some really big albums a few years before that, and then to just have that they were so big. They were filling up stadiums a few years before that, and then they still had this massive hit in front of them with an American band. And then in 1979, the Police had their first UK #1 with Message in the Bottle. Can you believe that? 1979. Was when that song was huge. Just incredible thinking about that. Okay, let's get back to this news story. Legendary member of KISS hospitalized, cancels show. Of course, look at the picture right there. That's Ace Frehley. And I saw this and I thought, okay, we have to hear what happened. Rock legend Ace Frehley taking a brief pause from touring after a minor studio mishap. According to a post on Frehley's Facebook page, the rock guitar legend had to cancel a show as part of his 10,000 Volts tour on a doctor's order after suffering a, quote, minor fall in his recording studio. And then it says, quote, "Dear rock soldiers, Ace had a minor fall in his studio resulting in a trip to the hospital," the post reads. "He is fine, but against his wishes, his doctor insists that he refrain from travel at this time." Frehley's performance at the Antelope Valley Fair in Lancaster, California was canceled. It was set for Friday. The Post encouraged fans to go to the fair to support his friends, the rock bands Quiet Riot and Vixen. So apparently Quiet Riot and Vixen were both playing at this thing too. The Post also said Frehley looks forward to continuing his tour and work on his next album, Origins Volume 3. Can you believe that? He's still... the guy has been, we had a show, or we did a discussion between me and Gary here a couple of weeks ago where we talked about Ace and all of his prolific stuff. And he had done, I think, since he left KISS, he had done as many albums, or maybe just one short of how many KISS has actually done since he left, which is just amazing to think about. And if he's got more coming out, he's going to outdo them. So Frehley, 74, a founding member of the rock band KISS, is set to resume his tour on October 10th in Decatur, Illinois. And then this is kind of funny. According to Guitar Player's online site, Frehley has a history of falling during his tenure with makeup-clad KISS, sometimes intentionally and sometimes not. As part of the KISS show, he would perform in high-heeled boots that would frequently cause him to trip up and take spills on stage. Whenever it happened, his bandmates, Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, would begin playing over him as if the entire episode was planned, according to the website. Quote, "I used to fall a lot in those boots," Frehley told Music Radar. "A lot of times Paul would cover for me by walking over to me like it was part of the show. He made it look like it was choreography or something." So anyway, and according to the report, Frehley damaged his knees by falling on them while performing. This often took place during the band's performance of Black Diamond while he was holding his Les Paul guitar. And you've seen pictures of him before where he's down on his knees. And it's funny because I remember reading about that where he would literally sometimes fall down and you'd see those big, and let's be honest, even back when he was a young guy in KISS, you watch him walking around in those boots, and it does look a tiny bit unstable. So anyway, we wish him well. Hope everything's great with Ace. So anyway, moving on. The comment of the day. This is from Charm Cracker Music 4250. He left this comment on our Van Halen video that was put out, I don't know what it was, like looks like about a week ago. And the title of the video was, Were They Okay Live? It was a video he made about Van Halen. And I really liked what he had to say in his comment because it was a little bit adventurous. It was one of those topics you have to be very careful because there's so many people that have so many opinions on this, but he just jumped right into it. And so I wanted to share this with you because I really liked what he had to say. So here we go. People will say Van Halen is not heavy metal. They actually opened the door for me for metal. And yes, I believe they were metal and changed to a pop band. And in between the first 4 albums, pretty much metal. They were one of the hardest hard rock bands to come out at that time. Heavy metal was becoming a new word at the time. It stuck and sounded cool. Now that's the part that I find really interesting and really important because so often I'm afraid to use the word heavy metal when I'm talking about almost anybody because when you say that, people inevitably go, that's not metal, that's not metal, that's not metal, that shouldn't be metal. But what you don't realize, and I noticed this as I've done this channel, the term heavy metal was so broadly used at the time, it was in some ways almost meaningless because it covered so much stuff. And it seemed to almost cover it sometimes any band that had a guitar in it. Now, that wasn't always true. I just know that having done this channel for a while, I actually saw an article once, because we do a lot of newspaper articles on this channel, where Journey was referred to as a heavy metal band. So again, I love the fact that he jumped in here because he makes the point like the term was still actually fairly new when you get back into those, mid to late 70s. People were just throwing that term around on top of all kinds of things. And so what he's saying here obviously is that, at the time, it was okay to refer to them that way because they had this really hard rock edge to them. And a lot of people at the time were referring to them as a heavy metal band. So today, it's hard to refer to them that way. And I have a hard time saying that. But at the time, you put it in context and go, yeah, they really did, in this umbrella that so many people were using for a particular style of music. At the time, Van Halen fit in that. Okay, let's go on. So he takes a little further here and kind of makes his point. The guitar sounds like metal flowing through the air. I love that idea. The guitar sounds like metal flowing through the air. Like Running with the Devil, very heavy metal to me. And he played, they opened up for Black Sabbath, the big daddy of heavy. Think black metal in comparison to Van Halen was more of a brown metal. Plus they had a guitar player who would inspire heavy metal to come. And that's interesting because when you listen to Alex Van Halen's book, he goes into this a little bit, that they were looking for this brown sound. And so, and he makes a really good point here too, because Van Halen, after they put out that first album, who did they go out on tour with? They were sent out with the original heavy metal band, Black Sabbath, and they opened up for Black Sabbath during Black Sabbath's Never Say Die tour. And so even though that doesn't necessarily classify Van Halen as heavy metal, it does help you realize that the record company themselves knew that these two bands, Van Halen and Black Sabbath, did have this overlapping style. And since Black Sabbath was the original heavy metal, and you could see that there was kind of that there were similarities between them and Van Halen. Again, it goes on and kind of emphasizes the fact that Van Halen, at least at the time, could be seen as a heavy metal band. Okay, then he goes on here and he says, Eddie guitar style, along with Randy Rhoads, set the template for metal guitar juggernaut. And that's really true. You look at all the people that were, heavy metal guitarists back in the 80s, you can definitely see that somewhere there were the echoes of Eddie Van Halen pretty much with everybody. He'd really done something. And then when Randy Rhoads kind of came along, not long after that, when he became notorious, between the two of them, they really did kind of set the stage for that guitar thing that would go on to really, really define heavy metal in the years to come. So later on today, we have a really cool video coming out because Never Say Die, we're right around the anniversary of its release. We have a really cool video coming out that's a newspaper article talking to Black Sabbath in 1978, since it was at that point, Black Sabbath was about 10 years old. And we have this really cool newspaper article, so look for it later today. It'll be coming out at 12:30 Mountain Time. And it's a really cool article talking to Ozzy, Tony Iommi, and it kind of goes into a little bit of where Black Sabbath was at that time, where they had come from, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. Okay, so to wrap it up, today's Daily Rumi. Let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. Hey, be sure to follow the channel, like the video, share this video with other people. Love to hear your comments down below. What do you remember about any of these people that had birthdays? What did you think about Ace Frehley's Fall? What do you think about this Rumi quote? And with that, have yourself a fantastic day.